Welcome back. All right, so every year I like to do the little mock draft, and this year I got it out of the way sooner than I normally do. I felt like it was a good time after the second game there, and since there's so many days in between Stanley Cup playoff games right now, it's like, yeah, sure, I'll do the mock draft, get it done and over with, because now I'm doing all the other history stuff too. And I always get kind of like a kick out of the comment section when that mock draft goes live because I know what people are going to say. And while I'm doing the draft, I know while I'm doing my research on where I think guys are going to go, I know exactly what people are going to say, and the internet never disappoints there. The player comparisons. I want to answer this first. The player comparisons, and I've seen, hey, this guy's not going to be like him. What's this guy talking about? What's he? Yeah, the Hockey News came up with those, and I even said at the start of the video, like, I don't necessarily agree with these, and I can even look through old draft preview issues and talk about where they got certain guys right or wrong over the years because I have draft preview issues going back to it's got to be the mid 2000s, but it's something they do to kind of give you an idea for here's how we foresee this player is going to be at the NHL level. It's a fun comparison, so I included that because I thought I don't want it to just be me putting the players' names up and going there you go. I had to give something else, so I tried to make sure I added the height and the weight and all that. And I thought the player comparisons from the Hockey News were just interesting, something to look at. But I didn't put them up there as like, this is how this guy's going to be. I even said, they're not necessarily 100% accurate. I did put a lot of time into it, and I do. Dating back to 2018, really. I learned my lesson in 2017 where I enjoyed the draft and I had some surface level knowledge of some of the prospects. I knew that I wanted Gabe Vilardi in Vancouver. They drafted Patterson. I wasn't happy about it because I wanted Vilardi, which was a joke on the internet for years until Vilardi reached the NHL, and it's turned out Vilardi's a pretty good player after he got past his health issues. But really, since then, I've been like, all right, I want to have some idea on these draft picks. And so looking through the prospects and looking through all the draft lists and the rankings and the scouting reports, that's what went into where I put everybody yesterday, was what I was reading for scouting reports and everything. And I even mentioned too in the prospect videos I did prior to the mock draft I did yesterday that some of them may be a little bit out of date comparatively speaking with where they're going to end up at the end of the year. But we'll see how it all turns out because it is very unpredictable. One thing that I keep in mind is you can't have too many defensemen. Every year, a team will make a pick, and people will say, what are you doing? You don't need that player at that position. But I think what fans forget is, first off, not every prospect you draft is going to develop. So if a team has a bunch of centers that they've drafted or some defensemen they've drafted, it doesn't mean that that team won't necessarily take a defenseman or a center the next time around at the draft table if they feel like that is a top-notch blue chip prospect and maybe he's better than some of the prospects they have in their pipeline. So maybe you draft somebody at the draft table at say 5, who's a blue liner, Montreal being at 5, and then maybe one of the other blue liners that's in the prospect pool, maybe they take a bit of a drop down, and maybe you look to move one of them, right? So I'm just saying that if you can get a better prospect, I think you do, and I think it's in the best interests of the GM to take the best player available. And I'm a big fan of best player available. I don't care about positions because it can change from one year to the next. You can see a team that one year their defense looks great, and then 2 years down the road, it's terrible. And so maybe 2 years ago when they're drafting, you're like, well, they don't need a defenseman. Look at this, they're great. Goaltending's one too, where maybe you don't need a goaltender, and then a year later, maybe there's an injury to one of your two goalies, and all of a sudden you desperately need a netminder. So I keep that in mind. Also, that centers usually go earlier than expected. There have been many times over and over. And again, a recent-ish example would be Barrett Hayden when he was taken by the Coyotes. That was seen as a bit of a surprise, comparatively speaking, with where he was going to be taken. I remember when P.L. Dubois was taken, that was seen as maybe being a pick or two earlier than expected because he was a center. Columbus was looking for a center. So that's the thing, is that centers will very often move up, and defensemen, I don't think you can have too many. Because, again, you do not guarantee that all your prospects make it. I know at one point Ottawa fans were like, okay, we're going to be great. Look at all these prospects. And some of those prospects, especially on the blue line, haven't, like Bernard Docker and Thompson come to mind, two that just haven't quite panned out. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any harm in getting too many blue liners because there's always teams looking for defense. Same as centers, right? There's always teams looking for help down the middle. I also had to keep in mind picks are going to get traded. Picks are going to get traded. And so I felt like it was more important that I put them in an order like, okay, I think this is how this probably goes, at least in my mind, uh, rather than necessarily just the logo there. So maybe a team trades down or a team trades up. A team's like, we really want Saleev. He's still there. We're going to call the team that's currently on the clock and try to get that pick from them because we really want Saleev. Maybe Levshinov drops a little bit, and the team calls and goes, hey, Levshinov's dropped a little bit. We'd like to pick him up. So I had to take that into consideration because we know there are picks that are in play. So the odds of the teams that I had on that draft board yesterday actually being the ones that draft on draft day, I'll go 50-50 on some of them, and maybe less than 50-50 on a couple as well. I think New Jersey's going to trade theirs. That's just one example. And so when I'm doing the mock draft, I think it's more important to go, well, these are probably best players available, more so than the team necessarily. But again, that's just how I approach it. And again, I always figure if it's a really good defenseman, take him where you think he should get taken. Drafts never unfold the way that we think. There are a lot of people right now that have a really good idea for exactly how this draft's going to go. And then when it doesn't go exactly the way they think it should, and it's not just fans either. People in the media will do this where they'll have this definite, okay, this is exactly where these picks should go. And then when somebody slides that they think should be higher up, or somebody that they think should slide doesn't, they're like, this team made a mistake today. These are mistakes. I do not do winners and losers on draft day, same as I don't do on trade deadline day, because no. I think it's silly to take a look at a bunch of 18-year-olds that just got drafted and say, well, this group of 18-year-olds, clearly that's a terrible pick. Those are terrible moves made by that GM. It's just, to me, it's silly. Guy was drafted a couple hours ago, and you're going to declare that clearly he wasn't as good as the other options on the board. It comes off as being silly. I will point out where I think there might be steals in the draft, but I do my best not to just pile on. All right, what is this GM thinking? Because we don't know the situation that the team is in. We don't know what the GM might be thinking. They may not tell us in that moment. They may give us platitudes with that player sitting next to them on draft day. But in reality, the storyline might be completely different. Maybe there's somebody on the team who wants out that we don't know about. Maybe there's an injury to somebody we don't know about, and they're thinking we have to be ready in case that player's going on LTIR, that kind of thing, right? So the draft never goes the way that we expect it to. That's why I don't sweat too much on the who goes where. I just do my best. Again, when I was coming up with that mock draft, I spent like 2 hours trying to get them all in a certain order, and I was like, okay, that's good enough. That's going to have to do for now. And no matter how many scouting reports I use, the complaints I know are going to be there. And I use scouting reports from all over. I've got a paid subscription to Elite Prospects, to hockeyprospect.com as well. I have the draft book for Elite Prospects as well that I've been going through and looking at picks. And again, you look at even amongst their own staff and where everybody gets drafted, there are definitely differences of opinion. There are differences of opinion as soon as you get past number 1 in the draft. Celebrini going 1 is where everybody agrees. Demidov being the second best player in the draft, I think most people agree with that as well. And so I think Chicago would be crazy not to necessarily draft him because he looks like he's going to be a fantastic talent. He's a winger, and just the idea of him being on a line with Bedard, that's something. There's already some good prospects with the Chicago Blackhawks. There's some good prospects on their way to the Chicago Blackhawks in terms of forwards. They've already got some good blue liners in there too. So yeah, I think adding Demidov would make some sense. But again, it's just for fun. It's just for fun. But thank you guys so much for those that understand that, mock drafts are just for fun, and yeah, don't take it so seriously. Great. For others, I wanted to answer a few things here and make a quick little video on it. So there you go. But yeah, mock draft's done. We'll of course get into the 2025 draft in about 10 or 11 months time. And then we'll get into another discussion of who goes where and how stupid everybody is. And then on draft day, it's not going to go the way we think that it will. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.